Alrighty. Alright. Good evening, everyone. This is Just Fine, as usual. So today, since we do not have a bot, we decided to go over something that our bots don't really specifically say that they're for, but you can use them for it. And that would be V reversals. So I noticed in my own play that I had a lot of trouble with my own V reversals. And this was more so because I just had a lot of bad assumptions about when to use them and habits that have formed due to those bad assumptions. Hold on a sec here, gotta adjust the mic a little bit. That's a little better. Now I don't feel like I'm shouting. Okay. So, one of those problems that came up was from something I described earlier when going over my problems with getting thrown a lot. So one of the things that I get thrown a lot during is when an opponent neutral jumps and they throw me. When I V reversal, because it's an air attack, right? I should be able to V reversal after the air attack. To me, I had that feeling of, oh, V reversal is supposed to get me out of pressure situations, and that's not necessarily true in all cases. And it definitely varies by what your V reversal is and what your opponent is doing at the moment. So that leads us to why RashidBot. Well, first of all, Rashid is one of the few characters that the bot for him specifically says V reversal. Another one that does so is ZangiefBot, but ZangiefBot is a lot more about patience and learning when to punish something. The V reversal against his V trigger is still something you want to be able to do under stressful situations, but by and large, ZangiefBot isn't meant to pressure you. So, RashidBot, on the other hand, is designed to be really frustrating. And Rashid as a character kind of basically is really frustrating. So, that was one reason why we picked Rashid. The other reason is that the point that we have for him is specifically something that Rashid himself doesn't touch you with. It's a projectile move that this is point D, I think it is on the bot page, and that is basically V reversal or somehow otherwise negate his V trigger. And I think I set that to, there we go. So this is for a lot of reasons, and I won't go over all of them since we've described those pretty well in the disc guidance for RashidBot in the first place. But because it's a projectile, that means it's not always useful from a V reversal perspective to have your V reversal go off. It always will vary by character. No V reversal has the exact same properties for the most part. There's very similar ones, but overall there's just so many factors. Just assume it's not going to be the same. But situationally speaking, if Rashid does his V-trigger, I'll leave him alone here for a bit since my autopilot is by default rushdown. So Rashid uses his V-trigger for a few reasons in the real world, right? He uses it as a mix-up, he uses it to get in on you, he uses it to provide himself some quiet space sometimes, to compose himself. But all of those require Rashid to behave in a certain way. And it also depends on where Rashid is going to be when you do your V reversal against it, like where relative you are. So we built the bot to have some of his, you know, standard ways of using the tornado. But because he's a bot, he's not always automatically adjusting for when it's gonna to set it up, basically. And this is actually sort of useful for our purposes for training against the V reversal in general, because it means it won't always be a good idea to do it. Against a player Rashid, it might certainly be a lot more frequently a better idea. Like right there. That was a good time to use that, because Rashid was by me, he was committed to a move, and overall, even if he did block for whatever reason, he would have gotten pushed out just enough where he couldn't follow up with more pressure. And it's that because RashidBot is specifically designed to be frustrating and pressure focused, that we chose RashidBot to demonstrate this concept. So and honestly, if you are facing Rashid, like just as a general thing, you probably want to know your V reversal a lot better than some other matchups, because almost every person who plays Rashid is going to be very focused on his good buttons, and his good buttons are great for pressure, are great for making your day really annoying. And it's those buttons that you want to learn when it is a good idea to use them and when it's not. So, now that I've done the foreground explanation of why we did RashidBot, I am going to lay down the rules here a little bit. Since this is a disc guidance, let's make a minigame out of this. RashidBot's already a minigame, but let's come up with some other rules just on the fly here, just to tinker with how they work. So obviously the original bot has a point for just V reversaling it or dealing with it. So let's take that point and let's add another point for if you specifically hit Rashid. So instead of just dealing with it, now I have a condition. Now I want to get something out of my V reversal. Now, RashidBot does block a bit, but not very much. So if you want a more defensive Rashid to test this against, we could probably figure some things out later. Well, we'll see how busy ZekuBot makes us, but overall, it's not too hard to add in a bit more defensiveness to RashidBot as a whole. So, getting a hit with Rashid with your V reversal against his V trigger, but obviously he does more stuff that it's probably good to learn when to V reversal, right? So there I would say is not a good time to do V reversal. Hold on a sec here. Because Eagle Strike, while it is used for pressure, Rashid gets out of the way. And he's fairly minus already. So if you know the basic frame data for this, it may not appear to be a good idea. And that's because it's not. But the reason it's not is a little less easy to see. So, even though he's minus after doing Eagle Strike, if I do my V reversal, even before he's ready to recover, my own recovery frames for that V reversal are still gonna go off. And I think for Bison, it's like... I think it's like 20. 26. Yeah, 20 recovery frames. So, even though Rashid's Eagle Strike is really negative, I have the 16 startup frames and the 20 recovery frames on top of that. So, even though the startup is safe, the recovery is no longer safe because he didn't get hit. So I whip. And that's sort of a common theme for the way V reversals end up getting punished. They end up either in a situation where you miss and you're recovering, or you hit, but the move the opponent used was so plus, or the recovery frames were so short, that now, even though they may have been just at neutral, they are now at a point where they are at high enough advantage to get in on and do some more stuff. Like that neutral jump air attack I was talking about earlier. So, if I think about that, if I think about moves that I know I'm going to be able to recover before Rashid will recover against, now I can start thinking, albeit with a need to know a little more frame data, when exactly I should be doing my V reversal. So like right there, that was not really a good time to do V reversal, because even if his even if I had blocked his double hit move and did the V reversal, his V trigger probably would have beaten me up, or at least hit me and put me in a position where Rashid would be able to recover from my knockdown if he quick rise. And then I would be in the same position than if I had not used the V reversal. And I mean, V reversal takes resources, right? You want to use it in a situation where you will be at most able to gain from it. So that's another thing about V reversals that you got to learn, is that when an opponent V cancels, they may have eaten the frame you V reversal in. So even if you would have reversaled perfectly, you now really can no longer V reversal properly. So you have to keep blocking. But if you do try to do the V reversal anyway, well, then you might get hit and it'll be a counter because you were pressing buttons. But it can be a little stressful if you were relying on that V reversal to get you out of the situation, or maybe didn't know that a V trigger could eat your input. But there's no reason to feel bad about it. It's just, it probably wasn't you. If you understand how to do your V reversal and you can do it fairly regularly, just don't worry about it. It's not you. It's the jerk who acted his V trigger. And that's another reason why I liked Rashid for this specific type of practice. RashidBot varies where he is on the field a lot more than a lot of other bots, because almost all of his specials will move him a tremendous amount, or at least enough to make the footsies of the situation a little more fresh, we'll say. So that's actually probably a good moment, although I wasn't V-triggered, so I couldn't do anything about it. There you go. His light spinning mixer can go on for a pretty long time, especially in his V trigger. No, I shouldn't do that. Dang it. There you go. So right there. The reason that is a good time to be a reversal. Not an optimal one, mind you, but it's still a good one, especially for if you're just getting used to the idea of the reversal. He was committed, and what being committed to a move means, especially if they are right next to you when you do your V reversal, is that you are most likely going to hit him with it. Or, for some characters like Ed or Fong or Rashid himself, you will have gotten out of the way of whatever the opponent was doing, and you will be behind them and be able to whiff punish them somehow. So for that moment was a good moment against his V-triggered light spinning mixer, because he was in a move where I could go basically, okay, you're gonna be in this move for a while. If I hit V reversal now, you will get hit and be knocked down, and I can set up the situation such that it's my turn. And for V reversals in general, that's sort of what they're all about. They're about either stopping your opponent from getting to take their turn, or somehow taking back your turn. So, if it's a move where you know you can hit them with the V reversal, it's probably a decent time to V reversal. This obviously is a super broad, fairly generalized, and not very helpful rule at the more advanced level. But if you are a rookie and you don't know how to think about V reversal, that can be a fairly general rule. If your opponent is doing a move that takes a long time, and you are not sure if you are going to get your turn after they do it, if you're not sure you're going to be able to punish the move afterward for whatever reason, whether the move pushes you out at the end, or it's very safe for the opponent to do, that is when you want to do reversal. Now obviously against something like the Rashid's V-trigger, it can be a little less obvious because Rashid's not the reason you're V-reversing, right? That wasn't very good English, but basically what I meant was he is not what the V reversal is responding to as far as the computer is. I need a better way to say this, but you are V reversing the projectile, not a direct hit, and because of that, you may not be sure if Rashid is going to get hit by it or not. There. That's better. And because of that, it can be a little tricky. And that's, again, why I said a little towards the beginning of this, why I thought it was a good why I thought it was a good move for practice against this. Anyway. So if you are not getting hit by Rashid himself, but you have a pretty good idea that Rashid is going to push a button after that. You're pretty sure he's going to go in after you. And this is the same for Guile as well. Guile has a projectile that he can walk literally through in order to hit you or throw you or whatever. If you have a sneaking suspicion that your opponent is going to use their projectile for that reason, and they are going to be next to you, then it might be a good idea to use your V reversal. Now, in the case of Rashid's V trigger, you have a little more room depending on the spacing. So if you're already far away from Rashid, do you want to use it or do you want to save it for a different timing? So, like right then, if I had done the V reversal against that V trigger, the one where he was close to me, but wasn't really trying to get through his own tornado. He was just sort of hanging in the back there. Would I have wanted to? He might have gone for his forward heavy punch, he might have gone for a spinning mixer, he might have even just tried to dash up and throw me. But, as you had saw, and he's done at least one more time now, he threw out Eagle Spike instead. And as we discussed earlier, Eagle Spike pushes him so far away that it's not going to hit. So let's think of a slightly even more complex situation. So let's not talk about his V trigger anymore. But let's talk about his dive kick. His dive kick is interesting because in most situations it's pretty safe. Especially if you time it correctly and your opponent isn't anti-airing you. It's pretty safe. I think it's like... Let me get the frame data 5 here. Right. It's like minus 35, but you were also already falling from your jump anyway. So as long as you space it right, you're probably okay. Now, trying to remember which set of inputs is good for getting his eagle spike more often. I think it was one that had it. No. Aha. We have it doing it pretty low though. So I'm not... Well, you can probably adjust that on... Okay, so... 2 through 5 then? Right, so for Rashid's dive kick, if it's low, obviously, it might not be the best of ideas. For the same reason that his ground eagle spike isn't really a good idea, right? He pushes himself away from you, and if you hadn't, you probably would have been in a position to do something else to get a better position against him. But if he came in from higher in the air, although I'm not sure this is quite the mix of moves we want just yet. No, I don't think we're getting any luck here. Alright. Don't think we need 5. There you go. I think that may have done what I wanted. Well, anyway. I guess that didn't go where I wanted it to go, but that's still fine. So let's go back to light punch mixer since apparently this setup works out a little better for that. So depending on the duration of Rashid's light spinning mixer, it can vary in how safe it is on block. So if Rashid only does the first hit of spinning mixer, just level 1, that's -2. So that's actually basically safe. And it's one of the things that online Rashids especially like to use to bother you. The longer versions, on the other hand, become gradually more and more unsafe. But if you have V reversal, because that move specifically drags Rashid closer to you, almost anybody with a V reversal that has a hit property can hit him during it. But obviously if I tried to do something other than V reversal, other than maybe a 3-frame jab, I might have a little less luck doing things if the Rashid is doing pressure properly. And the mixer also, Rashid spinning mixer just as a general thing is pretty interesting. And I think, did one have the V trigger in it? I think it did. So I'm gonna turn that back on. Oh, I had 5 turned off. Well, let's just turn them all back on. Anyway, if he is dashing, his mixer also changes, such that the level 2 light spinning mixer also gets more, just a tiny bit safer. But it's safe enough to make it that if you do anything other than a light button afterwards, you're not going to be at advantage. So, and obviously in V-Trigger, AV also changes how safe it is, so it can be a little complicated, which is why you want a lot of practice against it to figure out when it's better to do a jab, or to throw, or to obviously V reversal. If you have a friend that plays Rashid, it's probably a lot easier to test out a lot of his mixer stuff in particular with that. Because, again, the way his mixers are set up, they just have so many ways they can be different that honestly, both the computer CPU and the bot itself are probably not going to do as good a job as if you could just ask the person to do a specific thing. Oh, cool. Well, I'm all for fancy bot hacking, so let's see how this plays out. Okie dokie. Aha. All right. Well, I figured out that I can make him do annoying corner pressure this way. That's for sure. Aha. So let's see if there's something I need to do to punish him to get the proper behavior. Ah. Well, that would make it a bit harder, yes. Let's switch to Mika then. Since I don't really have a reason to not.
Metro City Bay Area.
There we go.
Rainbow Mika. I'm summoning a storm.
Oh. So for Mika, since hers is long enough to actually hit Rashid, I can actually use her V reversal against the ground eagle spike. Cool. I have a little harder time with the kick buttons than I do the punch. There you go. Well, we were here for spinning mixers, so let's see if we can... Oops. See what happens if we reversal the spinning mixer. Or I'll get thrown. Now obviously, normally you don't want to be a reversal spinning mixer because it has such a... or EX spinning mixer, sorry. Because it has such a long recovery and the ability to get crush countered that you're missing out on a damage opportunity. This is a similar reason why you don't want to normally be reversal critical arts if you're at fairly high health. It's good if it's like a multi-hit critical art and you're trying to avoid chip, but if the tank is full, you don't really have much reason to do that, and you can probably get off a lot of damage off of a whiffed critical art. Or a blocked one, even depending on the CA. What am I doing wrong here? Well, we almost got the thing that we wanted to see. So, as you may have just saw, the EX spinning mixer went a super long distance away, as opposed to its normal. And I was talking about the light spinning mixers, but honestly, this does show the aha, alright. Well, that's, oh, nope, that's not what I wanted. Cool. But anyway, as you can see, it goes a lot further, so if you don't punish it before he leaves you, you can run into some trouble in terms of it being a good idea to do the V reversal or not. With Mika, it's a little harder than Bison, for as Rillian said, Mika's is not omnidirectional while Bison's is, which honestly makes his V reversal a little easy moded for this type of interaction. So right there, that was not a good time to be reversal. Rashid was nowhere near me. And he probably would have recovered in a way that I couldn't really punish given how far away he was from me anyway. And it's that kind of left-right sort of problem that can make one need to train quite a bit muscle memory and situationally in order to know when it's a good idea. So I'm kind of glad I switched to Mika, honestly, because it shows that a little better. And Mika's is a little longer to recover as well. But that's much better. So I think we have 1, 2, and 4. If you want to train against this specific situation. That being the EX spinning mixer, I mean, and during V-trigger. But I'm fairly sure he can control if that happens or not. Maybe not. I don't know. It's been a while since I've did the yeah, I should probably do that. So I'll switch to Ed in just a moment here. So I'm sort of curious if there's a point where he can't do that. And that is why you block. Oh man. Also, Rashid just does a ton of chip. So, even though this, even though for your V reversal training, you'll probably end up blocking a lot, trying to prepare yourself for it a little bit ahead of time. He sort of forces the issue, and if you do nothing but block all day, if you had figured out a point system for yourself, you'll probably end up dying, especially since Rashid has his CA, and he can chip you out. So I'm gonna switch to Ed here. And we can get an idea of our non-hitting V reversal. The evasive reversal. There, that's a better way to put it. I am not doing well with words today. Alright, I think his was kicks as well. So, there you go. Now, Ed's is interesting in particular because Ed will just go right through the tornado and make the entire question of, oh, will Rashid do something? Will he stay behind his tornado? Will he try to trap you with it? Etc. Just sort of stops being relevant at all. And you more so have to worry about where am I going to end up relative to Rashid after the end of my V reversal. Oh, so there is a light spinning mixer in here. Good. On Ed, though, you want to be a bit careful, since obviously his pressing 2 kicks will get the Psycho Rising out instead. So, just another factor to watch out for if you're an Ed player, but you probably know that by now if you've played him for any amount of time, really. So, obviously, this sort of V reversal isn't as good at dealing with like singular hits, especially if the hits recover quickly on the opponent's side. It doesn't allow you to take back your turn in that way. But if you are trapped in a corner, you definitely have a lot more time to get out. If you have to deal with multiple hits of something, like a projectile and a actual physical attack, like Rashid does, you're probably a little better off. But the recovery time becomes a little more important. And this is why they're a little harder to use than the standard. Because when you V reversal in the move starts mattering a whole lot more. It obviously matters with characters with a striking V reversal, but usually that just means, oh, then they block or they throw you or whatever. But it doesn't become a whiff situation as often. So incorrect usage will still bite you the same, but you have a little less of the protection of, oh, if this hits them and they block, I'm probably still okay. So you have to be a lot more well-versed in your opponent's own recovery timings a bit. So, like, against Rashid's, I think that's his forward heavy punch. Against most striking type V reversals, though obviously not all, you can be fairly sure that you'll be able to get him with it. But the real reason why it's a little trickier is there's no division between the recovery and the startup of the move. It's just all one big block of frames. So, in total, Ed's V reversal is 33 frames, for example. Versus Bison's, who we said earlier was 16, 2 active frames, and 20 recovery. So his is longer, but in some ways it's shorter when you're thinking about, okay, is this a point in my V reversal where I am going to stop the momentum of my opponent? Anyway, so enough talk, I think, about Ed, and let's switch to Juri to make the final gambit here.
Metro City Bay Area.
And I'm going to
Judy. I'm summoning a storm.
mostly just do actual practice. Turning on all of Rashid's inputs here. And seeing what I find out, with a focus on V reversal. Damn it. So, Juri's is a bit stubby compared to some other characters. So what I can actually punish with it is kind of annoyingly low. But I think if my theory is right here, it should be able to punish him as he goes through the tornado if I hit the reversal early enough. So that's the main thing I'm trying to figure out right now. Maybe I should just make a button for this. you go. Why was that set to throw? Blame Kanzuki Dynasty as usual. Alrighty. Yeah, this should work out okay. Yeah, I wasn't able to be reversal then. Interesting. Doesn't seem to be doing V-Trigger as much as I want him to. Oh, right! Now I remember why it won't work. Because I think in order to get the upward spiral, she actually has to hit him. Which I don't know if is generous or not. But it does mean the thing I wanted to see if it works doesn't work. Because they hit super low. Like, I'm almost wondering if it's low profiles. Well, why did it work then? It must have hit him somehow. But that was what I wanted to figure out if I could do. So I'm gonna go back to our... I see. Well, that's interesting. Let's go back to our V-Trigger setup here since I'm technically still testing that situation. Oops. Yeah, and for my personal V reversal usage, I usually get it really late. To the point where interestingly cool things happen. But not always useful. So I can get it if I do it so late after the V trigger that I end up hitting him because he moves forward. So that's neat. Pretty hard to do though. I don't think I was close enough to hit with it though, so I'm wondering what makes it decide that to do the upward arrow, or upward spiral. Been hanging around Candy too much. Alright, so we'll switch to our final type of V reversal here for the day. Once I die. And that is Ibuki. Because Ibuki's V reversal is fun for a lot of reasons.
Metro City Bay Area. I'm summoning a storm.
Oh, hey, Weed. Alright, so I think hers is also kicks. Maybe not. Maybe it's punches. Oh, it is punches. Weird. Huh. So if you do that too early, you still get hit by the tornado anyway. Well, this is not the easiest spot to show the property on. Wow, the timing for that is super strict. So, I've been testing different timings for when he does EX Mixer during his V-Trigger. And so if I do it early, right, because Ibuki's kind of pulls you towards wherever your opponent is, and I think it outright teleports against projectiles. But because it does that, if he throws out his tornado in front of himself and he doesn't quite walk through it and sort of uses it as a shield, then if I V reversal early, then I'm going to get hit by the tornado because he's too close to it. But there is a moment where when he's going into his EX spinning mixer, where he's still technically on the ground, but he's pulled in just far enough into the tornado that I can hit him while he's still there. For whatever reason. I'm not even sure why I can do that. But it's super specific. But if it is sort of far away from him, if he tries to, like, retreat or whatever, or try to psych you out going backwards, then using his V skill to go really forward, you can get fully behind it just like you would with X. And of course, unlike Ed's, even if you do V-reversal, since it sort of follows the opponent, it's not always a bad idea to use it against the EX spinning mixer, because it'll still put you close enough to footsie range that you might be able to follow up with, like, I don't know yet. But I'll try for that setup next. But I bet you can do something. But yes, your V skill, your V reversal I mean, can vary quite a bit depending what character you are playing, and especially if your pocket character has a different type of V reversal, you may want to invest a bit in some V reversal training. Because the situations just differ so much between the different types. So, before we go, William, do you have any other recommendations for any other bots that are good for V reversal training? So Karin and Colleen bot are both able to be used for this. Good to know. Alrighty. Well, sure. Let's do one last bot then. Just to finish this up a little bit. Alrighty.
Union Station. Rainbow Mika. Birdie. I'll eat something after this.
Before I forget. Button on. Ah, I'm missing the forward motion. Okay. Oops. Do not usually have this much trouble with this. Well, I do have a tendency to do it far too late. So, this might be a good thing for me to specifically practice against till I get it right. Because I do tend to mentally confirm my V reversal way too much. I forgot he had V reversal in here. So that's actually probably a good bot for execution training. Alrighty. So, Birdie for execution, Karin for throwing, and Colleen and Rashid for more general tests against someone with a bit more pressure. Alrighty. So next week, obviously, we will be going over ZekuBot once he releases on Tuesday. You can take a look at all of our bots at 2-mk.org/bots. And we will be excited to get our hands on Zeku. So, see you Monday as always. This is just fine. Hope you found this at least a little useful. And have a good weekend.